Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. I am Bruce, and I'm here with Judy, the YouTube lawyer, and Judy is going to play a reenactment that she did of the Wendi Adelson deposition with our friend. What's our friend's Sue? What's her Susan? And what's her
from True
Lies, right?
Huh?
What's her podcast called?
True Lifestyles.
True Lifestyles. She's great. Judy's great. I hope you enjoy this. Here we go.
Okay. And also we have Joel Waldman from Surviving the Survivor. And this is before his channel totally blew up. So he actually had spare time back then to join Susan and me to do this.
This is a star-studded show.
Yeah.
Minus me.
Oh, come on. I saw your stuff on YouTube and Google and stuff. It's pretty impressive. So, okay, you ready?
I'm ready. Let me put my glasses on. Go for it.
Thank you for being here. So let's get started because it is a pretty long deposition. Okay, so State of Florida versus Sigfredo Garcia and Katherine Magbanua, deposition of Wendi Adelson, July 2nd, 2019. It was held at the Public Defender's Office in Miami. Okay, so on behalf of the plaintiff was Georgia Kappelman. On behalf of the defendant were Christopher DeCoste and Tara Kawass. And on behalf of the witness, Wendi Adelson, was John Lauro, Esquire. Okay, so Wendi Adelson is first duly sworn and testifies as follows. Okay, Ms. Kawass.
Okay, and I am Tara Kawass. You guys, please excuse any bad Jamaican accent. All right, so can you spell your name for the record, please?
Wendi Adelson, Wendiadelson.
Your date of birth?
Redacted.
Before we went on the record, we just discussed some of the parameters of the deposition. Is there anything you are confused about before we proceed? I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page before we go forward.
I'm not confused.
Do you understand why we are here today?
I understand why I'm here today.
Do you know someone by the name of Katherine Magbanua?
Hold on. Please assert.
On the advice of my counsel, I assert my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and under the Florida Constitution.
Off the record.
All right.
It might be easier if you can say I assert as opposed to the longer version, if that is okay. I agree.
I agree. We will make that clear for the record that any time Mrs. Adelson says, I assert, the statement that she previously answered to the previous question is her assertion to the Fifth Amendment privilege not to answer the question. Mrs. Adelson, do you know someone by the name of Sigfredo Garcia?
I assert.
I assert.
Okay, we are here today at the Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office. My name is Tara Kawass and Christopher DeCoste. We represent Katherine Magbanua. Also in the room, I would have all other parties announce their presence. Georgia Kappelman of the state of Florida.
John Lauro for the witness.
Wendi Adelson, the witness.
We are here. I'm going to pull up the case number, Leon County case number 16CF3036.
18CF498. I don't know if it's from Sigfredo's case, but I can pull it.
We are here because you have been listed as by the state of Florida as a witness concerning the homicide of your ex-husband, Dan Markel.
You don't have to respond. These are just questions, preface to her questions.
I'm going to go back in time. I'm not going to go into too much detail concerning your, how you met Dan and that other stuff. But where did you meet Dan Markel?
You can answer.
Washington, D.C.
Were you in law school at that time?
You can answer.
Yes.
And was he in law school at that time, or was he already graduated from law school?
You can answer.
He was already graduated from law school.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I got a little bit lost. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, how did you guys meet? Okay. Okay, we met through sorry. I'm
Line 17.
Sorry. Page 17. Sorry. My apologies. All right.
Do you have it?
What page are we on, you guys?
We're on page 7, line 17.
Okay, I'm sorry. My iPad just closed up. I'm so sorry. Okay. How long did? Okay.
Do you want me to read it?
What was the last line?
Okay. So, sorry.
Sorry.
First line is Get it together, counselor. How did you guys meet? How did you guys meet?
Okay.
You don't have-
How did you guys meet? You don't have to be too specific. Just give a vague description of how it is you two met.
You can answer.
Okay. So we met through the dating website. Okay.
We met through a dating website.
Okay. So were you living in Washington, D.C. at the time?
You can answer.
I was not.
Where were you living? Or no, sorry, were you visiting?
You can answer.
I was there for a job interview.
How long would you say you were dating Dan before it became more serious?
You can answer.
Maybe 6 months.
We will put approximately for the record. Now, you met him in Washington, D.C., but where were you living at the time?
You can answer.
Miami.
You continued dating him when you came back to Miami?
You can answer.
Yes.
Where was Dan living at the time?
You can answer.
Washington, D.C.
Okay, so at that point, you guys were maintaining a long-distance relationship?
You can answer.
Yes.
What year was this?
2004.
Then when was it that you guys got married?
2006.
The wedding was here in South Florida, correct?
Correct.
And describe for me, if you can, how was the first meeting between your parents and Dan Markel when you first introduced him to your parents?
You can answer.
Nice.
Did your parents like him?
Yes.
When did you first introduce your brother, Charlie, to Dan?
You can answer.
I don't remember.
Would that have been, do you remember if their first meeting may have been in Miami?
You can answer.
Maybe.
So just to be clear, you don't remember the specific interactions where they first met?
I don't.
Do you remember if after meeting him, what Charlie's opinion of Dan was when he first met him?
You can answer.
I don't.
You don't remember what his opinion was?
I don't remember.
Do you remember at the very beginning, Charlie ever stating to you that he did not like Dan when you were first dating?
You can answer.
I don't remember.
But your parents, they were okay with you dating him?
Yes.
Okay, any issues at all before you guys got married in terms of not between you and Dan, any disruption between Dan and your family?
Not that I remember.
Were there any issues in regards to the wedding?
You can answer.
Can you be more specific?
Have you listened to the podcast that is in relation to this case?
No. I want you to assert your right.
I assert.
There was information that there was an incident at your wedding regarding kosher meals.
As to that question, I want you to assert relating to the podcast. If you want to ask a question separate from the podcast, I have no objection.
I won't frame it in terms of the podcast. I will just ask you specifically about the issue of the food at your wedding. Do you remember there being an issue with the food at your wedding?
Yes.
What was the issue with the food at your wedding?
The wedding was supposed to be kosher style.
And?
There was some confusion about whether that was followed.
Okay, did you believe that this was the fault of whoever the caterer was?
Yes.
Was there any indication that anyone in your family had purposely made the food not kosher?
No.
When you found out at the wedding that the food wasn't kosher, did you take any action at that time?
No.
This is because it was your wedding day?
This is because I didn't know what I would do. I was focused on other things.
Did Dan take much issue with the fact that that had happened at the wedding?
He was upset.
How would you describe, was he upset with you or was he upset with the people who prepared the food?
You can answer.
I don't know who he was upset with.
Did he ever make an accusation to you that he believed that your family had something to do with the food not being kosher?
Yes.
He thought that?
Uh-huh.
At the time of your wedding, did Dan ever express to you why he thought your parents would have done that?
You can answer.
No.
Are you Jewish?
I don't know how that is appropriate, but you can answer.
Yes.
The reason I'm asking in terms of how strict your religion, do you and your family follow kosher diet in regards to your religion?
I don't follow a kosher diet.
Did you talk to your parents about this incident at the wedding, or did you just let it go?
No.
You just let it go. Okay.
The court reporter. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. No, I didn't talk to them about it.
Yes, you let it go.
Yes, I let it go.
My fault. I moved too fast. Then, apart from that time, did your parents ever voice to you, because this was your wedding, any objections or reservations about your marrying Dan?
You can answer.
No.
Okay. Had they voiced any objection, was the relationship such with your parents that you would have disregarded their suggestion not to marry him?
You can answer, but I have no idea how that can be relevant to this case, but you can answer it.
Can you repeat the question?
I almost lost my train of thought with the question. Had your parents at that time, so you are about to get married, if your parents had said to you, we don't want you to marry Dan, we don't like him, how much impact would that have had on your decision to continue the wedding?
You can answer.
I have no idea.
Okay, is it fair to say you are different, a different person now than you were in 2006?
It's been a long time.
How old were you in 2006?
I am redacted now.
Okay, so we'll do the calculation. When did you have your first child?
You can answer.
Redacted.
I'm going to ask the name of your child, but for the record, if you can just put initials. Which one is your first child?
B.
All right, at this point in your marriage, how is everything with Dan when you have your first son?
You can answer.
I don't remember.
Do you remember if things were contingent at that point, or were they generally, you were in a good place? Would you describe your relationship being in a good place?
You can answer.
Yes.
How close are you with your mom?
Are you talking about back then or now?
We can start back then. Back then, how close were you with your mother?
You can answer.
I don't know how to answer that question. How do you, on a scale from 1 to 10?
I can let you know. I speak to my mother every single day. Do you talk to your mom every day?
Back then.
Okay, 2004. 2000.
Kawass, back then.
Oh, sorry, back then. Sorry, guys.
2004, 2005, 2006.
We're talking about 2004 or 2009.
Let's go around blank on the birth of B.
I would say we were close.
Okay, did you talk more with your mom? Were you closer with your mom or with your dad?
At that time, you can answer.
I'm close with both of my parents, but since my dad has hearing trouble, it's hard for him to listen on the phone. The question of who I talk to more on the phone has more to do with his trouble. He had a brain tumor and lost hearing, so that has more to do with his hearing and less to do with the closeness. It's not a good metric for evaluating the closeness of our relationship.
Okay, I understand. Understood. Going back around 2009, I want to talk about your decision to move to Tallahassee. Okay, you were what law school did you graduate from?
You can answer.
I graduated from the University of Miami Law School.
Hey, Bruce, I hope you're not totally bored there, sitting there listening to this.
It's so boring, but it is. It's factual. It is what it is. You look great. Susan looks great. Joel is hysterical.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's funnier when he does the Christopher DeCoste lines and he kind of like changes the pitch of his voice later. But yeah. So, I mean, what do you think? I feel like this is painful because she's not
It's so
being
painful.
forthcoming. Yeah.
Right. So it's someone who's being evasive, being interpreted by an actress who is trying to be invasive. It's a shit show is what it is.
Yeah, be blunt. Yeah. I mean, because the whole time it's like you don't seem like you're trying to be helpful. You don't seem like you're trying to cooperate to help figure out who killed the father of your children. Or, this had to do with Katie Magbanua's trial.
Right.
So you would think that she'd be personally motivated to want to help because Katie's the bad guy, right?
Is Joel playing Lauro, her attorney?
Yes.
That's Trump's attorney. And and he was the one that was during the Charlie's trial. I think he was there a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still there. He's been by her side for all these years.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so people are saying they love you. How nice. Thank you. So feel free to jump in like while we're watching it live, since you're a professional comedian, feel free to give comments while we're watching too, because it is so slow and there are pauses and all that.
It's painful. It's like watching my show. Horrible. The worst.
No. I actually watched some of your YouTube videos last night and I was like, hey, this is like great.
Alive. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And you're like,
yeah, I was like, wow, Bruce's jokes
I retired coincidentally the Saturday night before we went into lockdown. And I've only performed once, and that was like maybe a year later. And that's it. I don't miss it. And I used to perform all the time. But thank you. Those are very nice compliments. I still kid around with all my friends, so I still have my sense of humor, but I don't perform anymore. So I'm venturing into a new phase.
Oh, why don't you perform anymore? Is it too stressful?
No, what happened was I was working mostly on cruise ships, and the travel to cruise ships, the shows are great, very professional, audiences are fantastic, but the to and from cruise ships is all done, with I have to fly all over the world, and I'm really tall, and they only pay for coach seats. And I would be in pure agony flying to Asia, flying to Europe. And then as soon as I'd get back home, I'd have maybe 2 days off, and then I'd be on another flight to Australia or wherever. So it beat me up too much. And I saved my money, which I tell everybody, save your money.
That's right.
Get to a retirement age, everything is cool.
Okay, well, that's good to hear that you planned.
Are we getting more of a search for tomorrow here? Are you going to play more?
Yeah, let's play some more. Do you want me to make it even faster?
How about a faster speed, like 10,000? Put it on 10,000.
I'll do it at 1.5 because at the beginning it sounded way too fast when I did 1.5, but I'll do it for now.
Whatever you want. I can only be here till Thursday, so that's it. You got a time limit.
Okay, and I'll put on captions so people can read the captions too if it's a little too fast. Okay, here we go. And feel free to make contemporaneous comments.
Okay.
And when did you move to Tallahassee?
You can answer.
So I moved to Tallahassee for my last year of law school, 2005.
Did you transfer? Did you complete your last year of law school up in Tallahassee?
You can answer.
I did.
How did you like Tallahassee?
You can answer.
I don't remember at the time.
Were you upset that you had to move to Tallahassee?
You can answer.
No.
And so you had B when you were living in Tallahassee?
I did.
How long in total did you live in Tallahassee?
I lived there 2005 to 2006. We came back to Miami for the academic year of 2006 to 2007 and moved back to Tallahassee at some point in 2007, 2008, 2009. 2010, 2011, 2012. I guess I was there 9 years total. That doesn't sound right. It was more like 8 years.
Would it be fair to say around 2014 is when you left Tallahassee permanently and moved to Miami?
You can answer.
Yes.
Understanding that we are talking about something that happened a long time ago, we do understand that for the record, that these are just approximations. If you are off by a little time, it's fine.
Okay.
When you lived back in Miami from 2006 to 2007, was Dan living there with you too?
You can answer.
So he came for half the year. He came to be a visiting professor at the University of Miami. They told him that he can come back for the fall semester, but he had to go back to Tallahassee the spring semester. So in the spring semester, we commuted to see each other.
While you remained in Miami, he was in Tallahassee.
I had a full year job in Miami. He started teaching back at FSU in the spring semester. So I don't remember who was traveling more often, but we went back and forth.
Was there any attempt to try to secure a job for him there in Miami?
That is why he came to teach.
That just fell through?
You can answer.
They voted on him and they voted no.
So he got the job up at FSU and moved to Tallahassee.
You can answer.
He already had the job at FSU.
As Mr. DeCoste. If I can jump in with a question.
Uh-huh.
Do you know the reason why he was not extended an offer by the University of Miami Law School? You can answer.
No.
Was there an indication that it was because of a personal dispute that he had with others within the school, if you know? You can answer.
I don't know.
Okay.
So how often around blank? Because this is when B is born. How often would your parents come up to visit you?
You can answer.
My mom and dad came for the birth, and then my mom stayed for a few weeks to help us. And then after that, I really don't remember.
Okay.
I guess maybe like once a month.
Would they just drive up from South Florida every time they came to see you?
You can answer.
Yes. I mean, there may have been times they flew, but probably drove most of the time.
For the most part, they would drive.
Uh-huh.
Answer yes rather than uh-huh.
Okay.
Did Charlie ever visit you in Tallahassee?
Yes.
Do you remember how many times he had been there?
You can answer.
Probably a couple of times before we got married. So maybe between 1 and 3 before we got married. And then he came for each of the births. And I remember him coming for my 30th birthday party when I was pregnant with B. So that would have been 2009. That is probably it.
Okay. When he would come to Tallahassee, would he stay there with you and Dan?
You can answer.
Yes.
On those occasions, do you remember ever there being any contention between Charlie and Dan while they were staying at your house?
You can answer.
Never.
Okay, how would you describe from your observation of their relationship?
You can answer.
Fine.
If Charlie didn't like Dan, would he have voiced that opinion to you?
I don't know if she can answer you that, but you can.
I don't know.
Are you close with your brother Charlie?
Hold on. The extent to which you are asking her at that time is fine.
At that time?
DeCoste.
DeCoste. Is there an objection to it? Because, I mean, if you want to object for the record, that's fine. Otherwise, I would ask that you would just object. Tara asked the question. If she understands it, she can answer, as Mr. Laurel. If the question encompasses, are you close to Charlie now, then I will instruct her to assert. If the question is, were you close to your brother back in 2009, then she's free to answer.
I will make sure to keep the time frame, clear for the record. So I think the question was, I can't recall what your answer was back then. Do you remember if you were really close to your brother Charlie?
When is back then?
When the birth of your son B?
Yes.
Okay, but you can't ever recall Dan and Charlie getting into an argument in your presence?
Back in 2000.
Back in 2009.
No.
Back in 2009, did Dan ever express to he didn't like Charlie in any way?
You can answer.
I don't remember him ever saying that.
Okay, how about your brother Robert? Back in 2009, had he met Dan Markel?
You can answer.
Yes.
Had he come to visit you guys in Tallahassee as well, too?
You can answer.
I'm trying to remember. So Rob and Haritha came to visit.
As DeCoste. Is that Campbell?
No.
Maiden name Campbell?
No.
You know her maiden name.
It's the same name that she has now, Chalapali.
Do you know the spelling for the reporter?
Sure. Haritha is Haritha, and Chalapali is Challapalli. It's possible that it's Challi instead of Challa, but that's close enough.
I think we were talking about if Rob ever met Dan before.
You can answer.
Yes, he met him.
Did Rob ever express to you how he felt about Dan? If he liked him, if he felt he was a good guy for you?
You can answer.
I don't remember there being a problem. I don't remember him saying anything negative.
When is it that things started to break down in your marriage?
You can answer if you understand the question.
It's been a lot of years.
I know. When I say things are like, I don't remember, I'm not trying to trick you in any way. If that is the answer, that is the answer.
I don't remember.
Do you recall if it was one specific thing that happened? And by that, I mean, in certain relationships, you say, oh, he cheated on me. So that was what caused us to start to fight and those kinds of things. In your relationship with Dan, was there one specific event, a fight or anything like that? Do you know, would you say, was there a point where things were starting to fall apart in your marriage?
You can answer.
No.
How would you describe? Would you just say you guys were just growing apart? Or how did you know that the marriage was not working out?
You can answer that.
I think saying we were growing apart is a fair description.
Is a fair description okay? How would you describe Dan at this point in your marriage, personality-wise?
In what point? 2009?
2009. And the reason I am asking is there have been, and you don't have to answer any of these assertions I'm about to make, but there have been several media reports and news shows about this case. They make portrayals about Dan, about who Dan was. I am asking you, since you knew him, you were married to him, the type of, how would you describe him, and the words would you use to describe his personality in 2009?
You can answer.
I think his personality was consistent from the time we met throughout 2009 or any other time. I mean, he was smart. He was hardworking. He was interested in his career.
Did he ever express to you how he felt about your career?
You can answer that.
Yes,
What was that opinion?
You can answer that.
I know he wanted me to work. I thought about maybe taking a break after I had B in Redacted. He thought it was important that I continue working.
Okay.
I remember that.
Do you remember if that was because of a financial need, or he just felt a different opinion, that he just thought it would be a good idea, that it would be good that you would be working?
You can answer.
It wasn't for financial reasons.
Then when you had your second son, did that position of his change at all?
You can answer.
No.
So he always supported you having a job.
Yes,
When is it you served him with your divorce papers?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, when I go into an area you're going to assert, I will continue just asking question, just so it's clear for the record, okay? So I have that divorce. I just want to make sure and give a time frame if it is necessary, okay? Around 2012, were you still living with Dan?
You can answer that question.
I'm trying to remember. We lived together for most of 2012.
For most of 2012, okay. Then did you move out of the house?
You can answer that question.
Yes,
Okay, in 2012, what address were you both living at?
You can answer that.
2116 Trescott Drive.
When you moved out, did the boys move out with you?
You can understand that?
Yes,
When you first moved out in 2012, did you move to another location in Tallahassee, or did you come down to South Florida?
You can answer that.
I moved to another location in Tallahassee.
Okay, was this a temporary location? Was your intention eventually to move down to South Florida?
You can answer that question.
No,
How long were you living in this area, in this other address that you moved to?
You can answer that question.
I moved in 2012. I lived there until after Danny's memorial service.
It would be from 2012 until you left Tallahassee. It was the same address?
You can answer that.
Yes,
What was that address?
You can answer that.
3303 Aqua Ridge Way, I think.
I can rely on any of the reports where the officers initially spoke to you and they put your address at that time.
Assert.
I assert.
How far away was that address from Trescott?
You can answer that.
I don't remember, but I'm sure we can use Google and see how many miles apart it was.
Okay, but they weren't you weren't living on the same street. It wasn't close.
You can answer.
It wasn't the same street.
Would you say it would take a 10-minute drive from his house to your house?
You can answer.
That's about what I remember, depending on traffic, maybe 10, 15 minutes.
So you first moved into that address, and this time when you are living at that address, when is it that you filed the paperwork for the divorce?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you know how Dan found out about that? He was being served with divorce papers.
Assert.
I assert.
Did you speak with Dan Markel after he was being served with the divorce papers?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember the conversations that you had with Dan about that?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember the nature of the conversations? Was Dan upset when he was speaking with you?
Assert.
I assert.
At this time, how involved were your parents in the decision to file for divorce?
Assert.
I assert.
Who are your lawyers at the time of your divorce?
You can answer that.
Different lawyers at different times. My best recollection is that Shannon Novi was my first lawyer,
Was your first lawyer? Okay.
I think.
She was a practicing attorney in Tallahassee.
You can answer that.
Yes,
How did you find her? Did you find her on your own, or did your parents recommend her?
Assert.
I assert.
Is there any particular incident that was the culminating factor that caused you to file for divorce, or was this a combination of many things?
You can answer.
It was a combination of many things.
Okay. Would it be fair
Okay, Bruce, are you awake or falling asleep?
I'm here.
Just thought it's kind of strange. Like, why would she have to assert her Fifth Amendment privilege over that question about who
Because
found
she's
them?
obviously guilty of all of this. So it's just when you watch people lying, it's hard to take because you know they're lying. So that's why. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of thinking that maybe it was Donna who found her first attorney. That's why the lawyer told her, don't answer that, assert your right, because anything that could potentially mix her up with the other suspected conspirators, the attorney doesn't want her to answer them.
Okay.
Yeah, because he probably knows the real truth. So yeah, so it just shows how involved Donna and Harvey were involved in Wendy's life and her divorce. So
Yes.
because I expect at Donna's trial, Donna is going to make it sound like, oh, I was just trying to help out, but I wasn't that emotionally invested in the whole thing, trying to downplay everything to show that she had no motive to kill Dan. Okay, do you want it faster?
How about hurricane?
Faster is better.
Tornado speed.
Oh my God. Okay, well, I'm going to keep the captions up, so hopefully people don't get upset if we sound like little chipmunks. Okay, here we go.
Fair to say, Dan had any indication, to your knowledge, that the divorce was coming?
You can answer that.
Yes.
Had it previously at least discussed with the two of you before the divorce was actually filed?
You can answer.
Yes.
So it's fair to say this wasn't a 100% out of the blue shock that you filed for divorce?
You can answer.
Yes.
Now, after the paperwork is filed, is that the same day you move into a different location?
On that, I want you to assert.
I assert.
Okay, how many times? When is the first time you saw Dan after the divorce paperwork is filed?
You can answer.
He was out of town when I filed, and so as soon as he came back, Danny and I got together with the boys and had ice cream.
Was this an attempt to explain to the boys that you were both going to separate?
You can answer that.
No.
What was you were just meeting with the boys together to have ice cream?
You can answer that.
I wanted him to see the kids and to talk.
How was that conversation with him?
You can answer that.
I don't really remember.
In other words, it didn't get aggressive in any way, or did it remain calm and it was a good conversation?
You can answer that.
It was calm.
Okay.
We had friends with us too, so there was another couple there with us and the kids. That is what I remember.
Did you ever at this time have any fear that if you were alone with Danny, that he would hurt you?
You can answer that.
I didn't want to be alone with him. He was angry and very upset, so I had concerns, and friends of mine said I should probably not be alone with him.
But at no time before, and I understand you were being cautious, but at no time before had Danny laid a hand on you before or been violent with you. Is that fair?
You can answer that.
That's fair.
He has never hit you.
You can answer that.
No.
Okay, so then after the meeting, in that conversation, did you guys discuss the divorce at all?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did he express to you that he did not want to proceed with the divorce?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Do you remember how were the boys at that meeting with him?
You can answer.
Normal.
Do you think they had any idea anything was going on? I know they must have been really young at the time.
You can answer.
I don't think they had an idea anything was unusual.
Okay, between you and Dan?
Between Danny and me or anything. He took a lot of trips. He came back. We got ice cream.
This wasn't unusual for them.
You can answer that.
Do you think that the boys at the time, did they ask you why we were moving to a different house?
You can answer that.
They didn't ask. At the time, they must have been 2 and 3.
Okay.
I remember telling B, L too, but he was too young to really listen, that Abba and I were going to live in separate houses and that we were still going to be friends and family, and B wanted to find out if he could have gummy bears. That was his response.
How would you describe Dan as a father to his boys?
You can answer.
He was a good father.
Was he the type of father that looked forward to spending time with the boys?
You can answer.
He was.
Who came first, his boys or his work?
You can answer.
I can't answer that. Danny.
Was his work extremely important to him?
You can answer that.
His work was extremely important to him.
He, apart from teaching at FSU, and correct me if I'm wrong, criminal law was his subject. What other things did he have in the works around the year 2009?
You can answer that if you understand the question.
I understand the question, but I don't remember anything else he was doing. He had a blog that he ran, but that potentially really the two being, there were only 4 law professors, so that related to him being a law professor at FSU.
Did he have any other sources of income apart from his salary as a law professor?
You can answer.
He wrote a book, so there would have been, in theory, proceeds from the book, but I don't know if he wrote the book that year. There were proceeds from the blog in terms of advertising, so there must have been something coming in, but I don't think there were any other sources of income in 2009.
Okay, now, in terms of when, around the time when the divorce paperwork was filed, did you have any discussions with your mother concerning how the divorces was going to proceed?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did your mother give you any suggestion on how she thought you should handle the divorce?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
At that time of your divorce, had your parents' feelings towards Dan changed at that point?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
How would you describe your parents' feelings towards Dan at the time that you filed for divorce?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did your mother, Donna Adelson, like Dan at the time of your divorce? If you know.
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did your father, Harvey Adelson, like Dan at the time of your divorce?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, and Charlie, your brother, what was his opinion of Dan at the time that you filed for divorce?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, after your divorce, and you said you moved simultaneously to the address, how often would you see Dan with the boys after that?
You can answer.
I need some clarification on the question. So when you say see Dan with the boys, do you mean like I was with the boys and see Danny, or I would see Dan with the boys?
Let me rephrase it. Were there ever a time after that there would be meetings with you and Dan without the boys present?
You can answer.
I worked in the same building as Danny, so I would see him a lot, and we talked a few times that I can remember without the boys.
How was it when you would see him at work? Would you both remain cordial with each other, or was it a situation where you ignored each other?
You can answer that.
We were cordial. There were also work events and things, and it was cordial.
But it wasn't a situation where you were at work and you felt like, oh my God, I need to avoid him because he's going to talk to me about something that's going to make me uncomfortable. Anything like that. Or were you okay with just, your work friendship was fine?
You can answer.
I don't really remember.
Okay.
He definitely would come by to talk to me.
Okay.
So that wasn't always welcome if I didn't know he was coming and was in my office.
Okay.
But I don't remember how many times that happened.
But in those interactions at work, it would never escalate to the point you guys were fighting at work.
You can answer.
No.
How long would you say it took things to settle down between you and Dan after the divorce? And that, I mean, where you could describe your relationship with one another as comfortable in the fact that you were separated.
You can answer that.
It's hard to answer that because I felt comfortable for a long time. I can't speculate as to how he felt, but it was definitely cordial from the beginning.
Is there a time, because I know you said previously, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you didn't, that Dan didn't want the divorce. Is that a fair assessment?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did Dan ever say to you, he wanted you, let me work this out, go to counseling, anything like that?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Okay, there was a point in time after the divorce where, for example, you started dating someone else. Do you remember how long after the divorce that occurred?
You can answer that.
I started dating someone else fairly shortly after the divorce.
Would you say, and I'm just trying to get a timeline, a month, 2 weeks, 3 months, a range that you think you felt comfortable?
You can answer.
I think within a month.
Within a month, okay. Did Dan ever assert to you when you were dating someone else? I mean, did he know? Did you tell him?
You can answer that.
He didn't know.
Okay, do you think he would have been jealous at the time if you were dating someone else?
You can answer that.
I have no idea.
When to your knowledge, did you know he was dating someone else?
You can answer that.
I don't remember when I found out he was dating someone. I have to think back. Maybe I found out it would have been 2013 or 2014.
I'm trying to get a sense of when. For example, because you are dating other people and he's dating other people. It seems the two of you are kind of on the same page in regards to divorce and separation. I'm trying to figure out.
I don't want you to respond to preparatory comments.
So going back to the divorce, when you filed for the divorce, was the case set for hearing?
Assert.
I assert.
Was there an issue as to custody with the boys?
Assert.
I assert.
By the boys, for the record, I mean her two sons. Were there any proceedings had in terms of who was going to have full custody of the boys?
Assert.
I assert.
In you first filing with getting a divorce, did you seek to have full custody or was it shared custody?
Assert.
I assert.
How involved was your mother in terms of the divorce proceedings?
Assert.
I assert.
I'm going to reference certain emails that were referenced in a police report just to put a little context as to where I'm going in the next set of questions. And for the record, I'm referring to Detective Craig Isom's supplemental report. One of them is dated September 14th, 2016. And just to put this in some context, on the day that Dan was murdered, you gave your phone to the police.
I want you to assert.
I assert.
You signed a consent for them to search your phone.
I want you to assert.
I assert.
There was a point in time on the video that they had you in custody of your phone and were able to download all of the contents of your phone.
Assert.
I assert.
They were able to come into possession of some of your emails. So I want to bring to your attention an email that is dated May 3rd of 2013. So this is a year before Dan's death. Okay, I'm going to read to you what it says. And I want you to tell me if you remember this conversation that Donna says to you. Donna writes to Wendi, the most important part of your divorce is relocation. And I sincerely hope that your attorney understands that in this is not negotiable. Your attorney needs to understand that your mother worked full-time in the family dental practice until September when she felt she was needed by you for the well-being of your children to get them through a transitional phase. Do you remember this conversation?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you recall if you had any conversations with your mother in regards to that particular conversation?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, how important was your moving to South Florida to your mother?
Assert.
I assert.
How important was relocating to South Florida important to you?
Assert.
I assert.
Then it goes on to Wendi is speaking to a counselor. I'm going to read this statement. This is dated May 6th of 2013. You let me know if you remember who this counselor friend is. My mom revealed to me later this evening that she got an anti-anxiety medication for the first time in her life because she found encounters with gibbers to be unsettling and disturbing, that she's spending a large amount of time crying and recovering from these episodes. Do you recall who you were having this conversation with?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay. Do you recall this time when your mother told you that she had been taking anti-anxiety medication?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you know who Gibbers is?
Assert.
I assert.
How much information did you share with your mother in regards to interactions, and how were you feeling about your relationship with Dan?
Assert.
I assert.
Is it fair to say that there are things you would keep from your parents in regards to the details of your divorce?
Assert.
I assert.
Or is it fair to say you were completely upfront with your family about your feelings towards Dan?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you ever express to your parents you were scared for your safety because of Dan?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you ever express to your parents that you were scared for the boy's safety because of your divorce from him?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, in another email, which this person is counselor responds to and says, your mom's anxiety rises to a level of therapeutic intervention. It's also possible that your mom's state of mind is incessantly to control your life makes it easier for you to make the best choice for yourself going forward. Is that a fair assessment that your friend was making about your mother? And by that, I mean your mother's incessant need to control your life.
Assert.
I assert.
Did you feel that your mother had a substantial control over the decisions that you were making?
Assert.
I assert.
Or would you just take your mother's opinion in stride and do what you wanted?
Assert.
I assert.
All right, in terms of your mom had made some suggestions in an email around June 26th of 2013 of how she felt that you should handle certain things about your divorce. One of them is she says that you should say that you're enrolling your children in a Catholic school. Do you recall your mother making that suggestion?
Please assert.
I assert.
Did you ever take her up on the suggestion?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, although your mother made certain suggestions on how to handle your divorce, did you follow all of your mother's instructions?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you know why they called him Gibbers?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you know why they, sorry. There's another email dated June 27th of 2013 from Donna Adelson to Wendi. It says, why not stand up to this, excuse me, fucker, is what it says. Why not fight? We are not talking about a lifetime of this. Did your mother ever have an opinion that you didn't stand up to Dan?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you feel that Dan had a certain level of control over you?
Assert.
I assert.
Would you describe him as emotionally abusive towards you?
What period of time?
Around the time of the divorce, so I would say around 2012 to 2013.
Assert.
I assert.
At what time was it when was it that you moved with the boys down to South Florida?
You can answer that.
I left Tallahassee after the memorial, but it wasn't supposed to be a move.
Okay, how would you at that time, did you believe it was just going to be a temporary visit to South Florida?
You can answer.
I did. I packed pajamas and a weekend suitcase for the three of us and thought I would be back for B's birthday, which was July 29th.
That didn't happen?
You can answer.
That didn't happen.
When was the time that the paperwork was filed to have you relocate from South Florida back to Tallahassee? This is before the homicide.
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, when was it that so was there ever a time that you took the boys proceeding after the divorce paperwork was filed that you attempted to relocate the boys to South Florida?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, then was there a court hearing scheduled? Strike that. There was a point in time when the judge ordered you to return to Tallahassee with the boys?
Assert.
I assert.
Was there any court order that had you remain in Tallahassee until the boys turned 18?
Assert.
I assert.
How did you feel about having to stay in Tallahassee?
Assert.
I assert.
How did your parents feel about you having to remain in Tallahassee?
Assert.
I assert.
How did your brother feel? And by brother, I mean Charlie. How did you feel about having to reside in Tallahassee?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you hate living in Tallahassee?
Prior to 2012?
Prior to 2014?
Assert.
I assert.
Prior to 2012, did you like living in Tallahassee?
You can answer that.
I liked living in Tallahassee.
There's an email from you on April 29th of 2014, where you reply to a friend's message that says, my parents and Charlie have been very supportive, but they are so angry at Danny that I don't involve them in most of the details. Do you recall that conversation?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay, if you did, would that have been a fair description that you do not involve your family in most of the details concerning your divorce?
Assert.
I assert.
But it is fair to say that around that time, you keeping steady contact with your mother?
Assert.
I assert.
How often would you be in communication with your brother, Charlie?
Assert.
I assert.
What did Charlie know about the details of your divorce?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember who was the first person that you began dating after the divorce?
You can answer.
I do remember.
Okay, who was that?
You can answer.
His name is Miguel.
How long did you date him?
You can answer.
We dated about a year.
Okay, who is the person you dated after that?
You can answer that.
I'm trying to remember the order.
As Mr. DeCoste. If we can stay on Miguel for a second, is that Miguel Edmondson? As Mr. Laurel. You can answer.
Yes.
DeCoste. Miguel is Miguelle.
Yes.
Edmondson is Edmondson.
Yes.
Did Dan know about your relations with Miguel?
You can answer.
Miguel and I were friends for many years before we started dating. He had come and spent time at our house as a guest.
Okay.
He visited in Tallahassee, so he knew we were friends.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. My page just skipped. What page are we on? Sorry.
Page 60, line 8.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Take a sip of water.
Okay.
You guys are doing great. 60.
Do you want us to skip ahead?
Oh, no, we're good. Okay. Visited Tallahassee. Okay.
Line 8.
Line 8. Thank you. Did he ever find out, or did you ever tell him that the relationship had evolved into something more than a friendship?
You can answer.
No.
As far as you know, Dan never knew that you guys were more than friends.
You can answer that.
As far as I know.
Because you know Dan from your marriage. Do you think his personality, that he is the type of person that if he found out, he would have confronted you about it?
At what point?
When you were dating Miguel, if he had found out that your relationship with Miguel was something more than a friendship, would Dan have asked you about it or said something?
You can answer.
Do you mean after we were separated?
After you were separated, yes.
I really don't know.
But he never did.
You can answer that.
He didn't know we were dating, so he didn't confront me because he didn't know.
Who did you date after that?
You can answer that.
I think we are coming now into 2013.
By dating, do you mean relationship of some significance?
Of some significance. I don't mean, going on a date with someone 1 or 2 times, never to speak to them again.
So starting in 2013, I briefly dated Daniel Sack.
How long did you date him?
A couple of months.
Did Dan know about him?
You can answer that.
I don't think so, but I don't know.
At this point, when you were dating Daniel Sack, are you aware that Dan is dating other women, or you don't know?
You can answer that.
I don't think I knew. I didn't ask.
Okay, was the situation at the time, this is around 2013, in terms of custody with the boys, how were you guys handling that?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did you guys have a schedule in terms of who would have the boys and for how long?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
After you were dating Daniel Sack, who is the next person you dated?
You can answer.
Jeff DeCoste. DeCoste.
Lacasse.
Is it fair to say that that relationship began at the end of 2013?
You can answer that.
I'm fuzzy on the details when it started.
Sometime in 2013, would that be a fair answer?
Sometime 2013.
Okay, how long did you date Jeff?
You can answer.
From whenever we started at some point in 2013 until June
Of the following year?
of 2014.
Okay, did Dan ever meet Jeff?
You can answer that.
Yes.
Did they know each other from being professors at FSU?
You can answer that.
I don't think so.
How did you meet Jeff?
You can answer that.
Jeff and I were introduced by a mutual friend,
Who is a mutual friend?
You can answer.
Stephen Tripozzi.
Who else?
As Mr. DeCoste. Jane? As Mr. Laurel. You can answer that.
Yes.
Jane McPherson?
As Mr. DeCoste. Mcpherson. Is that the correct spelling?
McPherson.
Was that the kind of blind date kind of thing?
You can answer that.
No, I don't think I looked him up ahead of time. I don't think I saw a picture, so I guess yes, like a blind date.
They said, hey, we have this guy we think you guys would match well together, and guys agreed to go on a date.
You can answer that.
Yes.
When?
You skipped a question.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, did your parents ever meet
Oh,
Jeff?
did your parents ever meet Jeff? Sorry.
You can answer that.
Yes.
Okay, when?
You can answer that.
My parents met him one time when they came to visit.
When they came to Tallahassee?
Uh-huh.
Did you ever take Jeff down to Miami?
You can answer that.
Jeff came with me when I was leading a spring break program in Imolaki, and then I took him to Miami. But I don't remember if I took him out to Coral Springs to see my parents. I'm not sure if I did.
From what you can remember, the interaction of your parents with Jeffrey was more than likely when they came to Tallahassee.
You can answer that.
That's my memory.
Do you recall Charlie and Jeffrey ever being in the same room together?
I want you to assert that.
I assert.
As Mr. DeCoste. What about in a hot tub at his house together? As Mr. DeCoste. I want you to assert.
I assert. That was probably Lauro. Must be a typo.
Yeah, that was definitely a typo.
I've noticed.
As Mr. DeCoste. It's my understanding, and this is coming from Jeffrey, that in March of 2014, during that trip down to South Florida, you and Jeffrey stayed at your brother Charlie's house for the night. Is that correct? I want you to assert.
I assert.
Does the time frame of March 2014 seem correct for when you took the trip to South Florida with Jeffrey? I want you to assert.
I assert.
Can we go off for a second? Conversation held off the record.
Yes. Now, we had spoken about you and Jeff had come down, but you mentioned it was around the time of spring break. Would it be fair to say that would be around the time of March of 2014?
You can answer that.
Yes.
And do you remember how long you were in Miami? Was it a couple of days or a couple of weeks?
You can answer that.
It must have been a day or two.
A very short stay. Okay. How did Jeff feel about Dan Markel?
I want you to assert.
I will assert.
Did you discuss with Jeff any details about your divorce?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did you express any opinions of how you felt about Dan around the time of 2014 with Jeff?
Please assert.
I assert.
Did you ever say to Jeff that Dan was a bad person, that he was mean, spoke about him in any bad sort of way?
Assert.
I assert.
And how would you describe Jeff as a jealous person?
You can answer that.
I mean, it's hard to say. I think people can feel jealous in certain situations, but to call someone a jealous,
Did he ever get jealous with you in an unwarranted time? Like, did he ever accuse you of anything and it was completely unfounded?
You can answer that.
yes.
Okay, did your relationship get to the point where Jeff actually ever told you that he loved you?
You can answer that.
I feel like he must have. It's been so long that I don't remember,
All right.
but probably.
Did the boys ever meet Jeff and hang out with Jeff?
You can answer that.
They did.
Was Dan aware of that?
You can answer that.
Danny was with us a couple of times when we were all together.
The interaction that you ever witnessed between DeCoste and Dan Markel, had they ever gotten into an argument in your presence?
You can answer.
I don't remember any argument.
Have you watched Jeffrey DeCoste's several sworn video statements that he has given to the police in this case?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Okay.
As Mr. DeCoste. For the record, to clear that up, there are 3 statements that were given. One on July 21st, 2014, another on July 23rd, 2014, and the last on March 6th, 2015.
Okay. Have you ever watched any of those recordings?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Has there ever been a time where have you ever had a conversation with Charlie where Charlie told you that he looked into hiring hitman to kill your husband?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did you ever tell Jeffrey DeCoste about a conversation like that you had with your brother?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
In watching, if you ever watched his sworn statement to the police, is it your opinion that he was being truthful with the police?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Okay, when Jeff describes Charlie being a guy that hangs out with people on both sides of the track, do you have any idea what he is talking about?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you know your brother Charlie to hang out with criminals?
Assert.
I assert.
Has Charlie ever introduced you to anybody that you would consider an unsavory individual?
Assert.
I assert.
Now, I'm trying to focus to get some time frame leading up to the date Dan was shot. So Dan was shot on July 18th of 2014. Now, prior to July 18th of 2014, when was the last time you remember seeing Dan?
You can answer.
My best memory of the last time I saw Danny was probably a few days before that when I took the kids for dinner and I saw him. I don't remember now. It was in the complex where they moved the Whole Foods to, and there was a burger fight there at the time. Now I don't remember which one we were entering, but I saw him in the window working at one of them. Maybe I saw him at the Whole Foods when we were going into the burger fight. That was the last time I saw him.
Would it be fair to say that you had given a sworn statement to the police on the day he was murdered? Is that correct?
Laura,
I'm
Sir,
sorry.
it's okay.
I want you to assert. I assert.
We're on
I
page
want you to assert.
or
I
some-
assert.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. Would it be fair to say recollection of the time when you gave that statement would be better than it is today?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
So I can rely on your sworn, well, not sworn, on your statement, your statement that you gave to the police where you said you had seen him at the Whole Foods.
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Is there any doubt in your mind that you were at Trescott Drive the day before your husband was killed?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Would there be any reason why you would be walking down the street with the boys the day before, which was the July 17th of 2014?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
At that time, around July of 2014, what school were the boys attending?
You can answer that.
They were attending creative preschool.
What time would normally school start for them?
You can answer that.
I honestly don't remember. So
Early-
sometime in the morning,
Early morning?
8 or 9.
How many days a week did they go in July of 2014?
You can answer that.
I also don't remember because it was summertime, and it would depend if I was done teaching for the summer, if they would go less. I don't remember if they were there 5 days a week or less.
Okay, we have 20 more minutes of this, but sped up, it'll take less than 15 minutes. So any thoughts or funny quips, Bruce?
Yes, but it pertains to you, if you don't mind. You
Sure.
can really act. You know that? Like the way you are right now, you're just a regular person. But on this video, you actually show emotion. I was never a good actor. I see talent here. How do you like that?
Thank you, Bruce.
Even-
That's
even
very
in that
nice to
scene.
hear.
You stay focused. You don't look away. You know your character. Very good.
Have you
And
seen
I'm seeing all the comments from people, and
Oh.
they are so locked in and so zoned in. I watch all this stuff, but I'm not aware of these details, and your viewers are really into this. They know all the little nuances.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what most of us here are all about. Like, we want to know every little detail, every nuance of this case, which, of course, some people be like, gosh, you guys need to get lives, or what's wrong with you? But hey, this
I
is
would
our
really like-
community.
I would really like, those cams that they put, the hidden cam. I just like to see a cam in the South Dakota prison in Charlie's cell. I think you could sell that. That would be a 24-hour video cam, and just to watch the machinations he goes through over, just a 5-hour period of where he's rethinking everything he did and where he thought that he had it done. He had it locked in, bang. And now it's a dank, smelly screaming. You know what? You're a lawyer. You've been inside of prisons. You hear scream. You see these documentaries. They scream. People are insane. They're howling at the moon. And that's all his life is. That's much more interesting when you speculate about things like that. Watching this is good, but to see the punishment for these people that create such horrible crimes. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead and go back to the video if you want.
Okay, let's finish this up, and then maybe we can play
My beard
one
is
of your
growing.
stand-up
I'm
comedy
going to have a
videos.
beard down to my waist by the time we finish this.
Okay, let's get.
Okay.
Do you remember July 18th of 2014 was a Friday. On that day, when this occurred, do you remember if the boys were at creative daycare that day?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
The day before would have been a Thursday. Do you remember if the boys were at creative daycare the day before?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Do you know whose week it was that week, which is the week of July 18th? So the Monday would have been July 14th. Were the boys with you, or did Dan have the boys that week?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Okay. Is it fair to say that your custody arrangement at the time would have been 1 week with you and 1 week with him?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Okay. Then in the weeks that Dan would have the boys, you would see them on a Wednesday and vice versa.
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Had you just been in Miami 2 weeks? Before 2 weeks, right? Before the homicide.
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did you make that trip with your boys down to Miami to see your family? Was it for your father's 70th birthday party?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did you travel down to Miami for your father's 70th birthday party?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did your father have a party for his 70th birthday party?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
If there was a party, was Charlie Adelson at that party?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Was Robert Adelson at that party?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Was Donna Adelson at that party?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did you bring anybody to that party?
Assert.
I assert.
Were the boys at that party?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you bring Jeff to the party?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you recall if during that trip, were you having any conversations with your family, your mother in particular, about any issues that you were having with Dan at that time?
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Did you have any specific issues with Dan at that time?
Assert.
I assert.
Is it fair to say that at that point, you pretty much moved on from your divorce with Dan?
Assert.
I assert.
Starting with your mother, did Donna Adelson seem strange to you in those 2 weeks that you were in Miami?
Assert.
I assert.
Did your brother Charlie say anything to you that caused any concern?
Assert.
I assert.
At that time, did your brother Charlie speak ill or say anything bad about Dan at that time?
Assert.
I assert.
Your father Harvey, did he at that time express any issues with Dan?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you have any knowledge of any plans to have your husband killed when you were down in Miami at that point?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you think that your mother is capable of the theory of hiring a hitman to kill your ex-husband?
Assert.
I assert.
Your brother Charlie, the same question.
Assert.
I assert.
How were the boys those 2 weeks when they were in Miami? Did they enjoy being there?
Assert.
I assert.
How much time did your mom spend with the boys leading up to July 18th of 2018? 2000.
Assert.
I assert. I need to ask my lawyer a question.
Sure, no problem.
Recess.
taken.
Okay. Now, so Mrs. Adelson, have you ever met someone with the name of Katherine Magbanua?
Assert.
I assert.
How did you meet her?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember when you met her?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember if this was, were you introduced to her as a girlfriend of your brother?
Assert.
I assert.
Or did he just introduce her as a friend he was dating?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you know how many times you've ever come into interactions with Katherine Magbanua?
Assert.
I assert.
And in any, if you did have any interactions with her or hung out with her at any time, did you ever open up to her about your divorce?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you guys have that type of relationship that you would go into details about the divorce, which you had had a year before?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you ever talk to Katherine Magbanua after July of 2018?
Assert. As Mr. DeCoste. July 18th, 2018, to be specific.
I'm sorry, July 18th of 2018.
As Mr. DeCoste. No. July 18th, 2004.
I'm going to re-ask the question. Have you ever had any conversation with Katherine Magbanua after the date your husband was killed?
Assert.
Assert.
Have you ever hung out with Katherine at your parents' apartment in South Beach?
Assert.
I assert.
Were your parents living at the time? Where were your parents living at the time after Dan was shot?
Assert.
I assert.
Have you ever met anybody by the name of Sigfredo Garcia?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you even know who he is?
Assert.
I assert.
All right. Have you ever heard of Charlie talking about someone with a name by the name of Sigfredo Garcia?
Assert.
I assert.
Have you ever heard of Charlie talking about the Latin Kings?
Assert.
I assert.
Have you ever heard of Charlie mentioned that he knows of any members of the Latin Kings?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you know of someone by the name of June Umchenda?
As Mr. DeCoste. UMCHINDA. As Mr. Laurel. You can answer that.
I do know June.
Is that someone your brother started dating after the homicide?
You can answer that.
I don't know when he and June started dating.
Are June and him still dating?
You can answer that.
I have no idea.
When was the last time you spoke to your brother?
Assert.
I assert.
By brother, I mean Charlie Adelson.
Assert.
I assert.
When was the last time you spoke to Robert, your brother?
You can answer that.
Probably in 4 years.
Since you had any communication with him?
Yes.
Now, would you be able to tell me where you were the day before Dan was shot? That would be Thursday, July 17th of 2014.
I want you to assert.
I assert.
Would you have any independent recollection of your day-to-day schedule the week of June 17th through June 14th of 2014?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay.
You asked about June 14th.
The week of June 14th. By that question, I mean, would you be able to...
As Mr. DeCoste. July.
July, thank you. Would you be able to tell me your whereabouts each one of those days, July 14th? And thank you for the correction.
Assert.
I assert.
All right, the day of the homicide. Did you have a conversation with Dan that morning?
Assert.
I assert.
Did Dan reach out to you in an attempt to have the boys? He said that he offered that he would take the boys for the afternoon and possibly take them to the pool. Do you remember him leaving you that voicemail?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember trying to get back in touch with him?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember explaining all of your whereabouts to Detective Isom on the day of the homicide took place?
Assert.
I assert.
When you were giving that statement to Detective Isom, did Detective Isom tell you that you were being recorded?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you know you were being recorded?
Assert.
I assert.
All right. Now, that morning, you were at home having your TV repaired. Is that true?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you have an 18-minute conversation with your brother that morning?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you have an independent recollection of the conversation you had with your brother that morning?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you recall if your brother was asking you any questions about Dan's whereabouts that day?
Assert.
I assert.
Would you have known what Dan's whereabouts would have been at that time of July of 2014?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay. Do you recall if you had any conversation with your mother around the time of the murder that week, of them trying to ask you where you would be at a particular time?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you recall any of your family members speaking ill of Danny or saying anything in terms that would lead you to believe that something would happen to him that week of July of 2014?
Assert.
I assert.
At that time, did you have any suspicion that anyone would try to hurt Dan?
Assert.
I assert.
When you found out that Dan had been shot, were you completely shocked?
Assert.
I assert.
Where were you when you found out that Dan had been shot?
Assert.
I assert.
Who were you with when you found out that Dan was shot?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you learn that
As Mr. DeCoste. Did you learn that Dan Markel was shot when you were in the interview room with Tallahassee Police Department investigators? As Mr. Laurel. Assert.
I assert.
What information did Detective Isom give you when you were leaving the restaurant to go to the police station?
I assert.
I assert.
Do you remember if Detective Isom was with anybody else when he transported you from the restaurant to the police station?
Assert.
I assert.
There was a point on the video when you leave the room to go use the bathroom. Do you remember coming into contact with anybody at that time, having any conversation with them at that time?
Assert.
I assert.
It was very important during that recording. You and Mrs. Pearson basically reiterated important it was to have a rabbi go to the hospital. Do you remember that?
Assert.
I assert.
Okay. Do you know if, or did you go to the hospital after you left the police station?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you go straight to your boys?
Assert.
I assert.
All right. What information was given to you by Detective Isom that is not on the recording?
I assert.
I assert.
How soon after the homicide was the memorial service?
You can answer that if you recall.
I'm trying to remember. To my best recollection, it was like Sunday.
The Sunday following the incident?
That is what I remember, but maybe it was Monday. There was a wake for several days, so I don't remember.
Days started probably flowing into each other. Was it a few days after the shooting?
2 or 3 days after.
Okay. Did your parents immediately come up when you let them know what had happened?
Assert.
I assert.
On the recording, you contact your mother and inform her that Danny had been shot. On the morning, you can hear the reaction from your mother. Do you recall what your mother said to you?
Assert.
I assert.
Would you be able to tell me more specifically what your mother said to you on the phone at that time?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you know if she indicated in any way, shape, or form that she knew before you told her that he had been shot?
Assert.
I assert.
Who picks you up from the police station?
You can answer that if you know.
Who?
Or did they release you to your car to you?
No, I think the detective drove me to my friend's house who had the boys.
Okay, would that be Lynn?
You can answer.
Lynn.
Do you remember any conversations that you had with the detective? Would that be Detective Isom you drove with?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember what conversation you had with Detective Isom when he was taking you to Lynn's house?
Assert.
I assert.
When she says detective, sorry, go.
As Mr. DeCoste. When she says Detective Isom, do you know who we are referring to? As Mr. Laurel. You can answer that.
Yes.
As Mr. DeCoste. You know him as investigator, not detective. Investigator Craig Isom, I-S-O-M, Mr. Laurel. You can answer that.
In my head, I kept thinking of him as General Isom. I don't know what his actual title is. Investigator now.
Do you recall how soon your parents made it to Tallahassee?
Assert.
I assert.
Did your brother Charlie come to Tallahassee when he found out about the shooting?
Assert.
I assert.
Do you remember what conversation you had with your parents? Can you describe to me the conversations with your parents when you first saw them after the shooting?
Assert.
I assert.
Did you speak with your parents if they drove up? I don't know if they drove up or they flew, but if they drove up, did you talk to them on the phone on the way up?
Assert.
I assert.
If you did, do you remember the details of that conversation?
Assert.
I assert.
In your opinion, was your brother surprised? Was your mother surprised when you told her Danny was shot?
Assert.
I assert.
Or did her reaction to the information cause you any pause?
Assert.
I assert.
Is it your opinion that your mother behaved oddly, not how someone would normally react when finding out their ex-son-in-law has passed away? Was her behavior, in your opinion, strange?
Assert.
I assert.
Same for your father. Do you think your father was acting strange?
Assert.
I assert.
Did Charlie come to Tallahassee, I think, for the memorial?
Assert.
I assert.
At that time, now you've been up for a few days, were you prescribed any medication to deal with the anxiety after Dan was shot?
Assert.
I assert.
All right. Who was it that handled the arrangements for the memorial service?
If you know, you can answer.
So I have a friend named Elizabeth Chambers, now Elizabeth Emanuel, but she and Chris weren't married then. I saw her at the memorial and I asked her, are you here for me or are you here in an official capacity? She said both. So I don't know if she was in charge of the memorial or something to do with the funeral. I don't know if they were separate, but that's as much as I know.
As Mr. DeCoste. Okay, do you know how she spelled the last name, both her maiden name and her married name? As Mr. Laurel. You can answer.
Yes, Chambers was Chambers and Emanuel should be Emmanuel.
Do you know when Dan's parents were able to come to Tallahassee?
You can answer that.
I'm not positive, but my best guess is they would have flown in on Saturday.
The day after?
Saturday. I mean, they were there at the memorial, so the question is, was the memorial on Sunday or Monday? So Saturday or Sunday.
Did they come and see you and the boys?
You can answer that.
I don't remember when I saw them first. I don't remember if I saw them before the memorial. I definitely spent time with them after the memorial,
Okay.
but I don't remember when I first saw them.
Did you spend time with them at the memorial in South Florida or in Tallahassee?
You can answer that.
Well, it depends on approximates if we're talking about times. They came to my home in Tallahassee. We spent time there, and then I spent time with them over the years since in South Florida.
You left. How soon after the memorial service?
You can answer that.
So the police had my computer. I remember I wanted to have my computer. It's my work computer before I left, but I had been calling and it seemed like I wasn't going to get my computer back. I feel like, I don't know if it was another day or day and a half or 2 days.
After the memorial?
Yes.
Do you remember who it was that you were trying to contact about the computer?
You can answer.
No, maybe I contacted Isom because he would have been my contact, or I met the victim advocate. Maybe it was her, but I have no memory of that.
As Mr. DeCoste. Would that be Sarah Latour? As Mr. Laurel. You can answer that.
That's the name of the victim advocate, but I don't know if I was contacting her or I was contacting someone else.
Okay. Have you gotten your computer back?
Assert.
I assert.
Was Detective Isom at the memorial service?
You can answer that.
I think so.
Did he make an attempt to come and to speak to you at the memorial service?
Assert.
I assert.
Did Detective Isom try to speak to your parents at the memorial service?
Please assert.
I assert.
And I apologize if I'm repeating myself. Did Charlie come to the memorial service?
Assert.
I assert.
Did Robert come to the memorial service?
Assert.
I assert. Do you guys want to stop now?
Yeah, I think we're on page
Yeah, that's on. We finished 100 pages, and I think we have about 58 pages to go. So
You guys want to pick it up another time, or what do you want to do?
sure, yeah, maybe once we go off the air, we can see if there's any other future date that's good with all three of us. Otherwise,
Yeah,
just even having one other person helping out really makes it go better.
totally.
Yeah, well, it looks like
That was
a
an
lot
awesome
of
job.
Good
Yeah,
job.
thank
You remind me
was
of
You're out of this bun.
Tara Kawass remind me of Anna Delvey from the
I was
Netflix
gonna
show.
say, I told my mother, I said, I literally sound like Anna inventing Anna.
Anna Delvey.
Anna Delvey with the German and British
Yeah.
worldly accent. And I tried, you guys. The Jamaican accent is so hard.
Yeah, it's hard, but I mean, you did a good job because you had to do about 95% of the talking. While you and I just kind of sat there saying assert.
Maybe it was fun. I took acting 101 and every penny paid off.
You can tell. You can tell, Anna Delvey. All right, well, I'll be in touch. Thank you.
So,
Thank you guys out there. Sorry we can't hang on and address all the comments, but I do have a meeting to go to, so
Okay.
we'll be in touch soon.
I'm
Thank you.
the comments, you guys.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Play it
Bruce,
again
we're sitting through this.
one more time. Put extra slow speed.
No, I mean, we all would have fallen asleep if it had been at normal speed. So
No,
sorry, it sounded a
I'm
little
telling
late.
you, you got it tomorrow. You stop being a lawyer and go move to Los Angeles and start going on auditions. This is what we've discovered tonight. It's incredible. You really have talent.
Huh?
You have talent.
Oh, well, thank you. But I am way too old to be doing that. And I think I can make more as a lawyer than some struggling comedian actress
I would
wannabe.
So yes, I'm sure.
But you know, Bruce, like someone who got mad at me for doing comedy, she told me, well, why don't you just quit doing YouTube and try out for SNL? And I was like, okay. Thank you. Is that a backhanded compliment? Yeah. But, you know, I mean, sometimes people get comedy. Other times you can really make people mad and upset because they don't like it or they think you're being offensive. So I think it was kind of good that you chose to mostly focus your jokes on yourself and your inability to date or get enough good women or something like that.
It's called it's self-deprecating because it's better to make fun of yourself then there are some comedians who, like Don Rickles or Sam Kinison, they were very, Sam was very hostile. But you got to be able to back it up and be very confrontational. I'm not that way. So I always found I was the best target. But enough about me. Let's go back to you.
Oh, I'd like to hear about your comedy and stuff. So if you don't mind, maybe later we could show one of your comedic routines from the 90s or the 80s or something. You have a lot of stuff out there on YouTube that your fans put up. Have you seen it?
I'm aware of it.
Did they get your permission to put that stuff up?
There's no permission. That's okay. And I'm very flattered that people would put that up.
Yeah, it's not like they're making money off of you. Oh, although I did see
one bad show that I did where I was on I had to follow a guy named Lenny Schultz, who was really crazy, and I did not do well. And fortunately, that video does not exist. So I'm not worried about that. Can't put that up.
Okay. Yeah. Well, some people are actually selling your autograph for maybe $45 on eBay, as well as pictures of you for $19.99.
Are you serious?
Yeah. If you search on eBay, then it comes up. It's like, oh my gosh, like people are making money off of you. Well, I don't know, because it hasn't sold.
I think it's never going to sell. But I think it's because these comedy clubs, when you perform at a comedy club, they want your picture and they want you to sign. So maybe those clubs went out of business or they went bankrupt and somebody got complete control of all the walls, all the comedy clubs have walls of all the comedians that perform there. So it's someone just saying, save everything, don't throw anything out, put it on eBay, see what happens. So that's interesting. No one's ever told me that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me see. Although some of these looks like it looks like you might have just signed a piece of paper for someone and then maybe they died and there's an estate sale. So they're like, let's put it on eBay. Yeah. So does anybody want to buy Bruce's autograph? Let's see.
There's nothing to buy. I'll look at that. Yes, that is. Let's see. Let me put my glasses on.
Yeah, it's like Bruce Smirnoff signed 355.
Hey, pal. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Paul. Best wishes.
To
Who's
Glenn.
Paul?
Which I have no idea.
Best wishes. This is from 2003. Oh, look at your picture.
I had hair. Look at that. Who in their right mind would ever sell anything like that? Isn't that something? Well, go figure.
Yeah.
All you have to do is ask me. I'll give it to you for free. Don't ever pay. There's Yakov.
What is this? Playboy Yakov Smirnoff? Okay, I guess that stuff shows up.
He was a Russian comedian. Very, very funny. And he was in Playboy. That was one of his first things. They interviewed him. And yeah.
They didn't actually have him naked in Playboy.
Oh, you found those pictures too, huh?
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Put him out of business.
That's funny. Okay, we'll remove that from the screen. Yeah. So any more thoughts about all the stuff going on with Donna? You heard about the latest motions?
Tell me, what's the latest?
Okay, so her latest motions, which were denied, she tried to get out on bond because she said she had all these medical problems that, like narrow ear canals. And,
right, that I saw. Everybody's making jokes.
Some like aches and pains and breathing problems, and she cut herself on her arm on some metal part on the washing machine, and they didn't even have a Band-Aid. So she had to use a maxi pad to stop the bleeding. And the food is all a bunch of carbs like spaghetti and potatoes. So there's no protein, and she wants to get out on house arrest so she could live with Harvey in a rental home in Tallahassee with like a ankle monitor. And, you know, she promises she's not going to flee, and she couldn't adequately prepare for trial with her attorneys. So
Right.
I think those were the reasons. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I actually watched that a few times. She has no. I believe she has no chance of being let out, and the trial
Yeah.
will be magnificent.
Yeah. Well, the judge already denied it. So Tad says spaghetti for breakfast sounds pretty good for me. What is Donna complaining about? Well, I mean, I guess anybody is going to get pretty bored of the same food if it's like bad quality and eating the same things over and over again. But come on, you're in jail. So what are they supposed to do? Have some private chef or give you exactly what you want? That's part of jail life. Yeah. Oh, okay. Wesley says he would buy the signed Playboy, the one signed by Yakov Smirnoff.
There you go. What the country. Very funny guy. He's very funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. So Bruce is going to have to do an OJ raid to get his stuff back. Yeah. Okay. And you're not getting royalties. Yeah. Do you get royalties?
If you're in motion pictures and television, depending on what the show was, you do. I used to get a 1 cent residual check. In fact, I have it on my refrigerator about every year. And it was from a movie that was made in 1980 called Heart Like a Wheel. And it was about a racing car, the first female racing car driver. I was just like in the crowd. I had one line, and every year I get a penny.
Oh.
I have to round it up. I think I really get a half a cent, but they round it up to a penny. And they have to pay the postage to send me that check, which is probably 40 cents, and the check is worth only a penny. So a lot of people in show business have get these crazy residuals. In fact, there was a bar when I lived in Los Angeles called Residuals. And if you came in with one of those checks, like I think if it was below 20 cents, they would give you a free drink. And then you had to put the check up on the wall. But I never did it.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, well, now drinks are pretty expensive, so maybe it is worth it to turn in your check for a free drink somewhere. But then you have to pay tip, probably buy some food. Yeah. So I noticed that on your IMDb, weren't you in a few movies?
I get what, name them. I can't remember. I was in a movie with Jackie Mason. You remember Jackie Mason? I was in a movie, but it was never released. So maybe that's because I was paid. So maybe that's on that. I was in that movie, Heart Like a Wheel. But again, I was just like a reporter standing in line. I think I had one line. So I never really had an acting career. That's why I was able to. I'm not a real good actor, but I can recognize it in you just reading that cold thing. Let's see, what are you pulling up for? Okay, The Secret World of Alex Mack. I remember something like that. Was I the husband? Man, I don't remember that.
What? This is like 31 years ago.
Way longer than that. Was 19. The Secret World of Alex Mack. What? Man, okay.
Who put this up here then? Did you?
No, it's real. It's real. I remember it, but I must have just stood there or had one line. The Evening at the Improv is a stand-up show. Action. I have a good line in Action. That's my friend Jay Moore was the star of that show. And he always got a kick out of me. So I play Larry the caterer. It's very funny. It's just like two lines, but it was constructed really well. Very funny. I forgot about that. You know, when you do one line, two lines.
Was Jackie Mason blackballed? Jackie
Mason was on the Ed Sullivan Show. Geez, for a lot of you people that are very young, you have no idea what I'm talking about. It was a show on Sunday nights. It was like the #1 show on TV. And Jackie Mason was really a fantastic comedian in the 60s. And one time he did the show and there was going to be a spacewalk, if you really want to date yourself. And so he was told he may have to cut his section short. So this was a national television show, the Ed Sullivan Show, and it was live. And all of a sudden, he just started his act, but they had to cut to the astronauts quicker. So Ed Sullivan was holding up a finger, indicating, you got to get off. You got 1 minute, get off. And Jackie was unprepared for it, and he was nervous. So he had to get off, but he said, I'm getting fingers from everybody all around, and here's a finger for you. And he went like that, but it was this finger, wasn't the dirty finger, but Ed Sullivan interpreted it as the middle finger, and it caused a big sensation. And he called him a dirty comic, and you'll never be on my show again. And that's all America remembers. But in reality, he sued Ed Sullivan, and they proved that he wasn't giving him the middle finger, it was this finger. And the irony of it all is Ed Sullivan had him back like 5 or 6 times, but people only remember that one incident. And Jackie's career struggled for 14 years after that incident. 14 years, this guy was on top. And because television back then, there were only a few networks. It wasn't like it is today with cable, and you have so many different choices. And people just remembered that incident, and he suffered for 14 years. But then after those 14 years, he came back with a one-man show, and it was the hit of Broadway, and he made millions and millions of dollars, and he achieved fame that he had never even accomplished in the 60s when he was on the Ed Sullivan Show. So it has a happy ending with a very terrible mid-peak. You can look all this up on the internet. Very interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, Harley seems to remember this.
How that applies to the Markels, I have no idea, or the Adelsons, but you asked me that question, and there's your answer.
It's interesting to hear about these stories because, you compared to most people who try to go to Los Angeles, I mean, you did make it big to some extent. I mean, you weren't Jerry Seinfeld, but you were almost Jerry Seinfeld.
I was able to cobble together a good act, and I became what's called a working comedian, which meant I could perform live, on cruise ships, comedy clubs. But my goal was obviously to be like a household name, and I fell short of that. I actually had a lot of opportunity. One day, if you want to have me on, we can talk about this. It has nothing to do with, the law that your show is about. But I can tell you some very interesting stories and all these famous people that I was involved with. And when you live in Los Angeles and you're out at these clubs, you meet all these people. They all come, and that makes for another show.
Okay, so we should do a separate show or something. But
Anytime.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can I play one of your stand-up things because I thought it was pretty funny? Yes.
Sure. You can do whatever you.
Okay, because I don't think this person has an active YouTube channel. So what are the chances they're going to find me and get mad and say, hey, you better take that down because it's taken away from my YouTube channel or something. So, okay, let's play this.
Oh, this is
and
a great
then we can still talk about the Markel case too. Okay.
That's Mike Birbiglia, who became very famous.
Thank you. Feel great to be alive in New York. Wonderful. Feel actually sexy tonight too. Laugh it up. I don't care what you think about it. Me don't care. I know I'm sexy. Let me tell you something, ladies. When I was in 5th grade, all the girls used to drool over me. This is a special school, but they liked me. Who am I kidding? I'm 44. I look like Big Bird. It's all over. That's why I left Los Angeles. I couldn't make it out there. You got to be gorgeous to survive in that town. I had a homeless guy living on my street, one tooth in his whole mouth, had it whitened, looked fantastic. And yes, the women are gorgeous in California, you betcha. But try and have a substantial relationship with them. You know what? They're crazy. They're 5 seconds from their next breakdown. They're like snapping turtles. They could go at any moment. They got more problems than a math book. They're crazy, babe. Every woman I met in Los Angeles is like a jack in the box on the second to last note. That's where I met him. You know what? I wound up going crazy. There I said, I went to therapy for 2 years. And I ended it last April because I had an amazing breakthrough. My insurance stopped paying for it. And I said, enough of Los Angeles. I wanted a dream in life, was to live here. And 6 months ago, I made that decision and I moved to New York. And I'm so happy since I did that. I'm telling you. I moved to Brooklyn. Artsy, fartsy Brooklyn. And after 6 months, can I tell you something? It ain't artsy fartsy. It's gunsy knivesy. You can get killed in that town. I live 3 blocks from Martin Luther King Boulevard, Malcolm X Avenue, and Jackie Robinson Parkway. If I don't move soon, they're going to rename my street Bruce Smirnoff Memorial Drive. I'm there a month. I got threatened. Some 18-year-old kid comes right up and threatens me. I felt so humiliated. I said, right then and there, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. I enrolled in Martial Arts Academy. Taekwondo. And after 5 minutes of Taekwondo, you know what I realized? No can do. I'm screwed. I'm never going to meet the woman of my dreams there either. The truth to that matter is that I still think up here, I'm 25 years old. I like to go dancing. And I show up in these nightclubs, everybody there, 18, 19, 20 years old. I look ridiculous. I look like some twisted father searching for his runaway daughter. They don't want me. I'm invisible. If I had a stroke, no one would help me to a bench. So I'll tell you what I'm up to. I'm onto the internet. This is how I'm trying to meet women. And I found a new website. Fellas, listen to me. RussianWomen.com. I found this one woman. She's living in Chechnya. This is what her profile said. Conditions in my city are so horrible, I will do absolutely anything to get out. Now that's what I want to hear. So I emailed her my photo. She writes back, I think I'm going to tough it out here for a while. My sister wants me to do the ads in the back of New York magazines with the personal ads. Forget it. I read it like I would the comics. The women don't make normal ads. They make demands is what they make. They don't make they're like a bunch of terrorists. I am looking for Mr. Right. He must be handsome and sexy, as well as caring and sensitive. I got news for you. Any man who fits that description is also looking for Mr. Right. I'm out of here. Thank you very much. Happy holidays. I love New York.
There you go. That's a flawless set.
Yay, that was great. That was great. It's so much fun to still watch this after so many years.
That was a great set. There's yeah, that was good. That's a comic strip in New York. It's still in existence. And I moved there in 2001 in January. And it was great. It was great until 9/11. And then for like a year, like comedy was really, it was really a sad place, New York. It was, the clubs were open, but you know, people were scared to go out. It was just, it was real dicey. And then amazingly, it all came back. And then I moved down here to Florida in 03.
Oh, so where were you when 9/11 happened?
I was sleeping because it happened early in the morning, but I was in Brooklyn and you could see it from my street. It was very sad. You really want to go from comedy to 9/11? I mean, it was one of the most tragic things. There were a lot of people on my block who were killed. And a lot of Italian Americans lived on my block and Irish Americans. I don't know who lights candles? What would it be the Irish that light candles or Italians, or is it just Catholics in general?
Italian Catholics.
But there were so many it was so sad and just terrible. Again, to go from comedy to talk about this is
Okay.
so I could see it. You could
up.
see where I lived in Brooklyn. I lived on the water, and you could just look out to the right, and you could see everything happening. It was just terrible. Now what? We went from laughing. Now we're on the verge of tragedy.
Okay, well, there's just so many things to talk about. But you mentioned you were still working in the comedy club. So did you continue to regularly have to work at the comedy club during all this?
Everything was closed for, like a month, I think. And then it gradually started to come back. But now I lived in Brooklyn. So to get to New York, I could either take the subway or drive, but there were so many security checks that to get into the city wasn't horrible. But at night, the clubs close at 1. You come home at 2 o'clock in the morning. They were doing a lot of construction and there were lots of security. They closed down portions of highways because there was a threat of, will there be more terrorism? So sometimes just to get back, I live like 12 miles from the club to my apartment, but that could take an hour and a half to 2 hours because it was just crawling at a snail's pace traffic. In tunnels, they were worried people were going to drive a truck bomb through tunnels. So it would take 2 hours, and I had to pee, and you have to pee, and you're stuck in traffic. So it was really idiotic for a while, and then eventually everything got better. And the mayor, what's his name? Not Rudy Giuliani, but the guy Mike. Anyway, that mayor really brought New York to a new level. But I already moved to Florida. I moved to Florida in 03.
Yeah. And what made you move to Florida then? Did you have friends or connections there?
Yeah, I had come down here in 03 to work. There's a lot of the senior communities down here. And I was opening for a guy, remember Barney Miller, the guy Hal Linden, who was the star of Barney Miller. He's also a tremendous Broadway singer. So he was performing down here at the condominiums, and I was his opening act. And, the audiences were completely different. Obviously, in New York, you're getting all these young people, and down here it was all seniors, but they liked me just as much as young people. So it was really lucrative. No more winter, because I had never experienced winter since I was a kid. I lived in LA for most of my adult life. So that was getting to me. And who wouldn't want to live in South Florida? It's great. And there was lots of work.
And bringing it back to the Markel case, that's the way Donna and Wendi allegedly felt that, why would anyone want to live up there? South Florida is definitely the best place.
It's great down here. Yeah. I've never been to, have you been to Tallahassee? I've never been there.
Oh, the only time I went there was for Charlie's trial.
And what did you think of it? Did you find it nice?
Well, I thought it was fine because, actually, when I was a little kid, we lived in Albany, Georgia, which is like South Georgia, not too far from Tallahassee. So I kind of feel like most likely when I was a kid, we went to Florida all the time for vacations and, just looking for land. My parents were into buying real estate and stuff. So we went to Florida tons of time. I feel like I most likely did go to Tallahassee or towns like that when I was a little kid. So it wasn't, I didn't feel like this is a god-awful place because it sort of reminded me of Albany, Georgia. Granted, lived there back in the like 1970s and
Right.
early 80s. So, yeah. But I mean, it definitely must be so different from South
Yes,
Florida.
I lived about 2 blocks from where the Adelsons live in South Beach, and that was a very exciting time, and it was great. And it has forget about comparing it to Tallahassee. There's very few places in the United States that are like South Beach. So you can imagine, and the weird thing is how to get to Tallahassee from South Miami, because I've been looking into going to the trial, but it is so crazy to get. You have to take connecting flights. And if you go nonstop from West Palm Beach, it costs a fortune. So Tallahassee is really in a peculiar place where it's really unless you love to drive, it's like a 6.5, 7-hour drive. And which, that's a long drive. Some people I couldn't do that. And flying, I debate coming to the trial, but you watch it on TV and you say, gee, it's a lot of downtime. The couple of highlights you see of them bringing them out in chains or this and that, and the highlights. And when you sat there, isn't it a hard bench that you're sitting on? So your butt is sitting on a hard piece of wood. It's got to be very uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. That's why that day that Charlie was testifying, I was like, screw it, I'm just going to hang out at my nice hotel room. I stand up and move around and exercise and eat and drink as I see fit. And I didn't want to be in the same room with Charlie listening to his crappy lies anyway. But it is pretty uncomfortable sitting there nonstop day after day. So I don't know how Dan's parents and sister could handle it. It's physically stressful too. Yeah. But jumping around here, Harley has a question for you. Do you remember this eating a banana type incident?
Michelle Phillips, I know who she was. She was the mother. I once was at, what was the name of that? It was like a grocery store. At night, I was coming back from the Improv, and the daughter, this is when that show One Day at a Time, what was her daughter? Mackenzie Phillips. And she was only like a kid, but she was having drug issues at the time, even as a kid on the set of the show. And she was in front of me at the Mayfair Market, that's right, on Kings Road. And man, was she high. And she was a waste. It's very sad to see young people like that all drugged up at such a young age. Yeah, I've seen a lot of things. I shouldn't be telling tales out of school, but yes, when you say that. So I don't know the mother. The mother was really pretty, and the mother was married to John Phillips. Was that his name? And the Mamas and the Papas. They were from some of the best music of the 60s.
Okay, of course.
Yeah,
people keep asking you this.
Yeah, I know him. I don't know him well. We were all kind of really jealous when he came to town, because he just showed up and everyone said, oh, Jerry Seinfeld's coming from New York, the hottest guy. So we all went in and watched him. And he really, he smacked of like brilliance. And he really is that guy. On stage, he's really, really good. His material is impeccable, and he doesn't break character. And then he got the sitcom, bingo. But he had really, I think, broken in most of his stuff in New York. So I was not aware of him until he came to LA, and he took off like a rocket ship.
Yeah. And also, Bruce mentioned this before on previous live streams, but he did audition for the role of Vanya, right?
Yeah,
the friend or the competitor.
One of my friends was a writer on the show. So based on an incident that happened between me and him, he created that character, and I got a chance to read for it. And I got really nervous because I walked in. It was a special audition because they basically told. I know Larry David. I knew Mark, the casting director. I knew all those guys. So it was like they had a special place for me. They let me come in and read it. I got really nervous, and and it was to basically be me. And I got so nervous I couldn't even be me. So that does happen. And I believe that character, he came on about, I think about 10 or 12 episodes or something. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
the guy who got the role was terrific. And he was also a stand-up comic. And he did very well with that role part.
well, do you know what that guy is up to now?
Yeah, I mean, he was in a movie with Clint Eastwood. Yeah, if you look him up on IMDb, you'll see all the stuff he did. But I knew him because he was doing stand-up at the time. But after a while, I think he stopped doing stand-up and just became an actor. You know, acting is different than being a stand-up comedian. And I used to go to all these acting classes, but I never paid attention during them. That's why I can tell that you can act by watching you read that script there. What's Steve Heitner? That's
Steve,
right.
Yeah, Steve Heitner.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like he's done
This
tons of
is
acting.
all about, it's about being at the right place at the right time. And sometimes you get parts that other people weren't right for. Like there's a famous photo online of The Godfather, the original sheet of paper of who they wanted to cast in those parts. And when you see that, it's absolutely phenomenal what the movie would have been like if they went with somebody other than Al Pacino, someone other than Marlon Brando, someone other than James Caan. And they had a list of all these different actors, and they were all these other actors were also stars, but they were completely different than the people that they picked. And had they pick these other people, it's just your mind plays all these games of what would the movie have been that great with these other people in it, or were these people, heaven sent to all play that role?
Yeah.
There was a guy named Carmine Caridi, Caridi, Caridi. Look him up. I used to see him at the Improv. He was an actor, but he would come, people used to hang out at the Improv. He was such a nice guy, and I was in awe of him because I used to see him in gangster movies. And he was like 6'5", okay? And he was originally cast to be Sonny in The Godfather. And you can see it on that sheet of paper. They've got Carmine Caridi circled. But what happened was they really wanted Al Pacino, but Al Pacino is, I think, like 5'2". You can look, he's like either 5'2" or 5'3". Is that Carmine Caridi? Are you sure? Maybe that's probably him at a young age. Anyway, so
yeah,
you couldn't have Sonny Corleone 6'5" and Michael Corleone 5'2". It would have been a comedy sketch. So they took that role away from him and they gave it to James Caan, and the rest is history. They did give Caridi a small role in Godfather 2 when they go to kill what's his name, Frankie Pantangeli, in the bar in Manhattan. He goes, Don Corleone, Michael Corleone says hello, and then they rap a Garrett. So I believe that's Carmine Caridi. So that's and there was a big story written in magazines about that, about how he lost the part because of that. So I'm not telling you something for the first time. It's a famous story. But yeah.
Okay. So who is your favorite comedian?
Well, I did love Jackie Mason. Jackie Mason was great, and I got to hang out with him and watch the machinations in his brain. It was hard to figure. When people are that brilliant, you can't figure out what they're doing because they're so good that it's heaven sent. You can't. It's hard to decipher it. Robert Klein, I loved Robert Klein. Most of the comics of my era, we were all inspired by him. Woody Allen, Don Rickles, and those. I'm nothing like those comics, but your idols are not necessarily what you turn out to be. You just turn out to be whatever happens. You can set out to be one thing and you become something else. There was a guy named Ray Combs, and do you know that name? He was the host of what was that, when Richard Dawson had that show that he would kiss people? He took over from him. forget what that wasn't, the pyramid. I didn't watch game shows, but he was real interesting when he came to town. Do you really want a horrible story? I'll give you this horrible story and I'll really bum everybody out. So he comes to town, this Ray Combs guy, very nice guy. But all he does is he goes on stage and he sings. Yeah, that's him. Family Feud. That was the show.
Yeah, Family Feud.
He sings like Gilligan's Island. And here comedians are such deep thinkers, and we're trying to talk about our tortured lives, and we can't get women, and we have this. We're trying to find that zeitgeist inside. And here comes a guy on stage singing a Gilligan's Island song, and the audience likes him more than they like us, and all he's doing is singing an idiotic song. And we used to really we didn't like him we didn't dislike him as a person. We just disliked his act because all he was doing was stupid, idiotic, camp songs. And yet the audience went crazy over him, and he got very popular, and he became what's called an audience warm-up. So like a sitcom has someone who warms up the audience so that they laugh during the taping of the show. And he made a fortune doing that. He was a Mormon, and he had a large family, and he bought a beautiful home for his family. And then he opened up comedy clubs. I think he was from Cincinnati, and he opened up comedy clubs. This is not going to end well, folks. So but I'm giving you the beginning part. And then he was making so much money. And then they hired him for Family Feud. Richard Dawson was hosting it. And I guess he did 10, 12 plus years. So Ray Combs had it, and Ray took it to another dimension. It was incredible. And then you have to look this up because I don't want to discuss it online. He went insane, and he took his life. It's one of the most horrific, horrible, idiotic things. But this is what show business you ask me about. You see some of the greatest things in the world mixed in with such tragedy. And here was a guy that had everything handed to him. I don't believe this guy ever struggled. Obviously, he struggled mentally, but he never struggled career-wise. I mean, when you hit Hollywood and you do something as ridiculous as singing Gilligan's Island, and the audience explodes with happiness and laughter, he's doing something right. And then for it to end so tragically, I'm not looking to bum anybody out, but these are, I don't know. I never met Dawson. I don't know if he was a sleaze or not, but he was on Hogan's Heroes. If you really want to date, you people are so young, you don't remember. That show was a big sitcom, not a sitcom, but a comedy show in the 60s, Hogan's Heroes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, the more you talked about him, I was like, oh yeah, I remember seeing Ray Combs on TV. I can't believe he was only 40 when he offed himself.
Terrible.
Yeah. Oh,
nice guy.
Sad.
A genuine, Mormon, nice guy, family, but mental illness. It doesn't care about how funny you are or how much people like you. It just has a way of wrecking people's lives, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, more questions. Do you have to go, Bruce? It's been like an hour, 48 minutes.
We can do this another time, and I'll have all these stories for you. I have no problem. That's if your audience likes it. I mean, these people tuned in to hear about, the Adelson family, and now we're taking it to people offing themselves in the world of comedy. But if you ever want to talk to me about things like that, we can do that. Whatever you want, whatever your people write in and say, Judy, we never want to see Bruce Smirnoff again. I can say, I don't blame them. Let's move on with the Adelsons. But if they want to, we can do whatever you want. Because I enjoy speaking with you. You're a good audience.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a subset of people who are just excited to talk to you and get to know more about someone who also cares about Dan Markel's case.
Come on over. I got 2 cats and a pizza oven. I bought, listen, you want to hear a level of insanity. I started to learn how to make pizza. And I'm not talking about take a frozen pizza out of the oven. I mean, I learned how to, you can do, as you know, we can all do these things because of YouTube. So I learned how to make dough. I'm still experimenting, but there's so many different chefs that I follow. and I bought like a gas powered pizza oven. You can't use it in the house. You have to, use it in a ventilated area. And I started making really good pizza. Then I saw on OfferUp, somebody was selling, listen to this, a 400-pound outdoor pizza oven. I mean, this thing it's like what you see in a restaurant, and it's like $3,000, but they were selling it for $600, and I had to buy it because it's a deal. It was such a deal. And I live in a small community with like a little patio, and I have like a 400-pound pizza oven. I can make like 4 giant pizzas at once. So now this is all I do. This is my whole life, making dough, letting it cure in the oven, in the refrigerator, and then making pizza for everybody. This is a new level of insanity that I've reached.
No, that sounds great. Now you've got to make a YouTube channel talking about your pizza. And
there's so many other people that do it. There's people that make my pizza look like apple pie, but I'm getting there. And I'll send you, when we get offline, I'll send you a photo of what my pizzas look like. They're phenomenal. I have people calling me up. Hey, is it pizza night? Not yet. I gotta, I don't want to gain too much weight.
Great. Yeah. So what do you like to put on it? Like, what ingredients do you like?
Because people all fight over this and this topping. I just make cheese pizza, with tomato sauce, because some people don't want mushrooms. One guy wants pepperoni. So rather than cause a problem, just make cheese pizza. It's so good. Believe me, just the pizza alone, it's great. Doesn't need to have anything on it.
Oh, okay. Do you grate your own cheese, or do you get specialty cheeses?
I buy good mozzarella, and you use canned tomatoes that are whole Italian tomatoes, and you just use one of those food whatever grind, to get it into a liquid.
Hand mixer.
It's so easy, but the key of making pizza is the heat, and you have to have an oven that distributes the heat. Watch these videos. You'll learn from these great chefs. And I studied. This is like what I did during COVID. I learned, and you make so many mistakes. But the one thing about pizza is there is no such thing as bad pizza, because being a comedian on the road at 3 o'clock in the morning in Sacramento, California, even a Domino's pizza at 3:30 in the morning is good pizza. So there's no such thing as bad pizza. But to try and make great, great, great pizza, it is an art form. And where I'm from in Connecticut is considered some of the greatest pizza in the United States, even over New York. And you can watch people argue about that online. But that has become my passion. So when you come down to visit, I will make you pizza. I'll make you be so fat you won't be able to do podcasts anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I did try to make pizza in the past, and it just didn't taste good. So I was like, this is so much effort making pizza.
You have to have high heat. It's all about. So if you cook it in a conventional oven, you have to have like a stone in it, and that can pretty much get you there. But when you have gas, or you have what I've got with the wood and the coal, I'm up to 650, 700, 800 degrees. I can get up to 1,000 degrees. That's a bit too hot. 1,000 degrees, your pizza cooks in 90 seconds. Can you believe that? Amazing.
Well, getting back to comedy, though,
I make Chinese food while we're on Asian people.
Oh, okay.
Chinese food. I have a wok. I've got a high, powerful burner, and that's real easy. You're very intimidated when you go to a Chinese restaurant, you see these people banging and clanging. It's a no-brainer. Chinese food is easier than pizza. It's like peanut butter and jelly. You just need really high heat, good vegetables, and boom.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you know Mark Maron?
Mark Maron. I mean, I knew who he was. We would exchange hello at the Comedy Store. And when I knew him, because I left LA in 2000, but when I left, he was at the Comedy Store. But after I left, he started those podcasts. And he blew up. He had Robin Williams on his podcast. He has Gary Shandling. was able to get some, and then unfortunately these people passed away. So he was able to get 90 minutes, 2 hours with some of the greatest comedians ever, and getting, unfortunately, their last interviews. Gary
Yeah.
Shulman, great guy. He was I didn't know him really well, but he was such a nice guy. And he was so funny. He was great. Another terrible loss. Gone too soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever watch any of the contemporary stand-up comedians?
Yes and no. It's weird. Like, just because I am a comedian doesn't mean I watch comedians. I imagine, like, if you talk to baseball players, just because they play baseball, they may like opera. It just doesn't make, so that's not, that doesn't float my boat too much, watching comedy shows. There's like about 8 or 9 movies growing up that inspired me, comedy movies. And yeah, I watch those over and over again, but I'm not that attuned to the world of comedy because it's generational. So of course I saw 2 generations before me and I worshiped and idolized that. And then I liked my community, but then moving forward, comedy went to different places, and you just, not necessarily my cup of tea. So I don't watch a lot of comedy, no.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I see someone just comment. Dry bar is great. Yes. A lot of, you see, I work for an agency now, so I help book acts on ships. So we require, you can't be dirty on a cruise ship. You can have an adult show, but you got to have what's called a family-friendly show, because there's religious people on ships, there's children. So it's a whole different mindset. I have to look at comedy a completely different way. I can't, like, someone who's really uniquely original and might, be use 4-letter words or off color topics. I really can't use those people because they're going to offend people who are paying for a vacation on a cruise ship. It's a whole different world, but I still have some strings attached in the comedy world.
Yeah. When I was flying back from Taiwan back to the US, like, I was so bored on the plane, I was watching everything that they had as in-flight entertainment. So there was like this morbidly obese African-American man, and his whole stand-up comedy was mainly gross out humor, where he's talking about getting diarrhea and not being able to run to the bathroom on time on an airplane, or, like, making all these noises and funny faces. And I was like, that's not funny. Why are, like, this guy gets a big audience and he has a show that's being broadcast somewhere because I'm watching it on the in-flight entertainment. I was like, what the heck? I think I'm funnier than that person, but it's not like I'm going to try to make a living doing my stupid comedy and Donna Adelson routines and stuff. But that's what's fun about YouTube. Like, you can just make your own stupid videos, and if people want to watch it, then they can watch it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
it's very subjective. So,
yes.
And there's all different styles of it. Listen, the kind of guys I help get on cruise ships, I just watch the video like almost like a scientist. I just watch it. I know what it's like to be on a ship, and I just say, yeah, this will work. And I can tell, just by watching a minute or two of a guy, whether it'll work. It's not necessarily my favorite person or comic, but it's all subjective. So that guy that you were just talking about, somebody idolizes him and has their picture on their wall.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, like, how people get chosen, but maybe it is just who your friends are and who you know, and if they can promote you enough. And then sometimes, like, for some comedy clubs where it includes dinner and drinks, I think, like, the comedian is just kind of like a sideshow where people are just in the mood to just laugh, even if the person isn't really that funny.
Yes, comedy is contagious. And when you are, you remember, if you go back to grade school and you'd have an assembly and you were all, first of all, you were out of class and you were in this room, and the energy of all the bodies all around is electrifying. mentally and physically. So if something happens, it's transferred. So if somebody slips on the floor, the whole room could laugh because it's the energy in the room. Yes. There you go.
Yeah. I was going to mention, speaking of YouTube, there's actually been some younger Asian American comedians that I've discovered on YouTube, and they have tons and tons of subscribers, like Stephen He Comedy, Nathan Doan Comedy. There's some Indian American, or maybe he's in Canada. He's Indian, and he does all sorts of like funny accents, and his channel is something called Prims,
Okay.
PRIMZ, but it's really hilarious. And you think like, gosh, these are people you wouldn't see in a comedy club, but because of YouTube, they're just at home making these like funny skits and musical parodies, or making fun of their parents' accents and funny ethnic jokes and stuff. And it's hilarious. But, you know, I think it's totally changed now that you can have social media, TikTok or whatever, just to get yourself known out there. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. YouTube is created all these different kinds of stars. There's a star right here. This is Botchagaloop.
oh, how cute. So what's your cat's name?
Mr. Botchagaloop. And that was a character on the Abbott and Costello show in the 1950s.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm not of that generation, so I never heard of it. But how cute.
Botchagaloop weighs 20
Oh,
pounds. And the vets are very upset that he weighs so much. But all he likes to do is eat. And see how he's rubbing me. He just wants to eat right now. And he won't stop.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah. See, there are so many things. Like, have you thought about creating your own YouTube channel?
No. No, I'm
No?
not a show. I'm only on this with you because of unfortunately of the situation of the Adelsons. But I don't really want to be a performer anymore or anything.
Oh, okay.
And this is-
Yeah, because
I have another cat. I have Mr. Drysdale. I named him after Mr. Drysdale from the Beverly Hillbillies. But he's
oh,
out.
okay. Now that I remember. Yeah, I remember watching reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies as a kid. Yeah. So, okay, well, cool. So, any more parting words on the Markel case or Donna Adelson, Wendi?
No, I mean, I guess the countdown now is April, May, June. So we got another, and it's going to be mid-June, correct? So we've got
June 3rd.
Oh, June 3rd. Okay, 2.5 months then. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I do feel like, you know, we should have another show with you where you just talk more about other topics.
But watching these recreations, let's just, you know, you and me, and maybe we can get Susan on or whoever of these other content creators. It'd be great. Yeah, just to sit around and tell stories. I love doing that. You're such a great audience.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
And you're an ice skater on top of it, right? You've been ice skating this winter?
Huh?
Were you ice skating at all this winter? I know you
Oh,
like
of
to.
course. Yeah, I still take lessons every week. Every Wednesday, I meet with my coach, and we're working on a different Donna Adelson skating program to What I Did for Love, that song from the chorus line.
Sure.
So I'm still choreographing. Yeah, still working on it.
Great.
Yeah, so it's fun. Yeah, the next hearing is on the 25th at 2:30. So I'm not sure how long that would be, though, because usually the case management hearings are pretty short. The previous hearings were long because they had motions that had to be argued. But this time, I don't think it'll probably last more than, say, like an hour, half an hour at most, because there are no motions scheduled for that, as far as I know. So, although Donna's attorneys did file a motion to change venue, so I wonder if they're going to try to have that heard March 25th, because it's got to be decided on before the trial.
Okay.
So, yeah, so who knows? You know, I'll just wait and see, and hopefully SDS and Deep Dive True Crime will be live streaming it. So my voice is dying again, so I probably have to stop talking.
I didn't even notice that your voice was really powerful this whole show. It's great.
I don't know. It comes and goes. I think I need to schedule another appointment with my ENT to get the injection again, because they said it tends to wear off after a few months.
What did they give
So I have,
you? Decadron? What did they give you? The injection?
oh, it was Xeomin, which is generic version of Botox. So
Okay.
it's supposed to do the same thing where it kind of freezes your vocal muscles so they don't vibrate involuntarily as much. But the doctor told me that next time they can up the dosage to see if it helps more. But the downside is that I won't be able to talk as much for at least 1 or 2 days after getting the shot. So it's hard to time things with my work and court, and because I have to talk for work too. So it is difficult. It's very aggravating. So
There is a situation called Vegas throat. Have you ever heard that expression before? So because Vegas is a very low humidity, it's a desert area. So when acts fly into Las Vegas from other parts of the country where they have regular humidity, the dryness causes them to get laryngitis, which is obviously, if you're a singer, it's the end of the world, right? So when I would sometimes get a cold or a flu, and then even just getting over the cold or flu, forget about going to Vegas, you lose your voice and you need it. We used to go to doctors that were used to taking care of actors, because of doctors in Los Angeles. So this doctor would give me an injection of Decadron, which is a steroid, and your voice would come back like in 2 hours, and you'd be and a lot of times doctors in Vegas knew all about that. So when someone came in, had Vegas throat, they give them the injection. So when I moved to New York and I lost my voice and I needed it, I went to a doctor in Brooklyn and I said, just give me a shot. Just give me a shot of Decadron. And he goes, what? The doctor didn't even know what I was talking about. It's Decadron. It's a steroid. I know it's a steroid, but it's given to horses. It's blah, blah, blah. I didn't know. But I said, just give it to me. And he was really, really leery. But I told him, that this is what, and he gave me the injection. And a couple hours later, my voice was back. So write it down, Decadron, steroid. And when you go to
interesting.
I don't know what your situation is. Decadron is it's for a temporary loss of voice, but you seem to have a strain that can come on. So write down Decadron, see if a doctor will give you that. And if you turn into a horse, you can meet my cat and go out and look at your YouTube channel, Horse and Cat.
Great. Yeah, that kind of reminds me of ivermectin. Wasn't that for animals and people were taking it and stuff?
Ivermectin was for animals, but they listen. You can get it now. They have relaxed all the restrictions on what was the other pill people were taking, whatever it was. All those pills that were, oh my God, it's a horse tranquil, it's this and that. You can take all that stuff now. I don't know whether it'll cure you.
You can take it, but who knows what's going to happen to you. Yeah, well, I'll look into it, but I've been to 3 different ENTs already, and this was the only person who had some sort of solution that seems to have a little bit of effect. So, at least it's mostly covered by insurance too, because at first they denied the Botox injections. Then my doctor did some paperwork or something, so they approved the Xeomin, which is, I think, just a generic, something pretty similar. So we'll see. Yeah. Okay.
My cat likes me or what?
Yes, your cat seems to really like you and love you.
Food. That's all. He's just play acting.
Oh, okay. Well, it's great to see your cat and great to see you also. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see if we'll do another reaction to part 2, because that was just part 1 of when Joel and Susan and I read that boring deposition. But it's pretty much all the same, though. It's where she just, barely answers any questions and keeps saying assert, assert, assert and stuff. So I don't know if people really want to watch it, or we could still speed it up and just mainly focus on our commentary. You know, we'll see. Yeah.
And anybody who's watching, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Have a good evening then. Bruce, you can hang on a little bit so I can say goodbye to you personally. Okay, take care, everybody. See you next time. Oh, and also, I'm supposed to do something on my father's alibi, which is Alison Galvani's YouTube channel. She started covering the Robert 1 case on one of her recent live stream shows. And since I knew Robert briefly when we were law students, it's one of the cases that I've also been covering. So hopefully my voice lasts, and we plan to do something on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. So, okay. Thank you, guys. Take care.